We're going through every statement in Competencies 3 and 4. 7 statements total, 4 in C3 and 3 in C4. For each one, I'll define it in plain language, give you one transcript moment that demonstrates it, and where it gets confused with another statement in the same competency, we'll walk through the discrimination. Here's the listening posture I want you to take. You're not trying to catch the coach doing every behavior. You're listening for whether the behavior shows up when the moment calls for it. The session creates opportunities. Your job is to notice which opportunities the coach took and which they didn't. Open the bars document and the deep dive guide alongside this video. Have a notepad ready. We're going at the pace where you can keep up. If you need to pause and look up a statement in the guide, do it. Competency 3 is about agreements. The coach and client building a shared understanding of what this session is for, and then keeping faith with that agreement throughout. 4 statements live here. The first 3 address agreement setting at the start of the session. The 4th addresses agreement keeping throughout. Read all 4 together as a single contractual move. The coach and client are essentially saying, here's what we're working on. Here's why it matters to you. Here's what you'll leave with. And I'll keep us pointed at it, even if the conversation drifts. That's the C3 contract. Most ACC candidates handle the front end of this competency. Where they struggle is the back end, the part where you have to bring the conversation back when it strays. Watch for that as we walk through the 4 statements. A3.1, the coach invites the client to identify their desired coaching outcome. Listen for, what would you like to focus on? Or, what outcome would make this hour worthwhile? Or, what do you want to walk away with today? The behavior is the invitation, not the answer the client gives. If the coach states what the session is about, today we're going to work on your team alignment, that's not A3.1. The coach is choosing the agenda, not inviting the client to choose. If the coach asks and the client redirects, that's still A3.1 because the invitation was issued. The level depends on how directly the question elicits an outcome, rather than just a topic. What's going on this week is conversational. It might lead to a topic, but it's not really an invitation to identify an outcome. What would you like to walk away with by the end of our hour is direct. Both are technically A3.1, but the first one is closer to not quite sufficient, and the second one is at least sufficient. At A3.2, the coach and the client reach an agreement on what to accomplish. This is downstream of A3.1. The invitation is offered, the topic surfaces, and now there's a moment where both parties confirm what they're working on. Listen for the confirmation. So what we're working on is opening the budget conversation, and you'll leave with the first 3 sentences ready. Did I capture it? The client says yes. That's A3.2 demonstrated. If the conversation just slides into a topic without that explicit confirmation, A3.1 may have happened, but A3.2 hasn't. This is one of the most common gaps at ACC level. Coaches issue the invitation, but don't close the loop with confirmation. They assume the agreement is implied. ICF wants it explicit. The explicit confirmation is what makes A3.2 the behavior. A3.3. The coach shows curiosity about the client and how the client relates to what they want to accomplish. This is the relationship between the client and their topic. Listen for questions like, what makes this important to you? How long has this been on your mind? What's at stake if you don't address it? The coach isn't just asking what the client wants. The coach is asking why this, why now, and what it means. A3.3 is what gives the rest of the session texture. Without it, the coaching feels procedural. We're working on topic X. With it, the coaching has weight. We're working on topic X because it matters in this specific way to this specific client at this specific moment. ACC candidates who score well on A3.3 typically ask 3 or 4 questions in the first few minutes that explore the client's relationship to the topic, and they use those answers to shape how the rest of the session unfolds. A3.1 and A3.3 get confused all the time. Here's the cut, and it's a clean one. A3.1 elicits content. What does the client want? A3.3 elicits significance. What does that thing mean to them? Listen to this exchange. The coach asks, "What would you like to focus on today?" Client says, "I want to talk about my upcoming presentation." That first question is A3.1. The coach asked what the client wants. Now the coach asks, "What's making this presentation feel different from others?" That's A3.3. Same coach, same client, 2 different statements demonstrated, separated by maybe 10 seconds of conversation. The coach who only does A3.1 ends up working on a topic without context. The coach who only does A3.3 explores significance, but never closes on what the session is for. You need both. And the rater hears them as separate behaviors, even though they happen close together. A3.4. The coach attends to the agenda set by the client throughout the session unless the client indicates otherwise. This is agreement keeping in real time. The session opens, the agenda is set, and 40 minutes later, you can still trace what's happening on the call back to the original agreement. If the conversation drifts, and it will, the coach pulls it back. Earlier, you said you wanted to leave with a clearer position on the budget. Where are we on that? That's A3.4 in action. The phrase, "unless the client indicates otherwise," matters. The client can change the agenda. The coach should not. If the client says, "Actually, I want to back up. This is really about my relationship with my CFO, not the budget itself," the coach goes there. That's the client redirecting. But if the conversation drifts into a tangent and neither party signals a change, the coach owes the original agreement. Listen for whether the coach pulls the conversation back when it strays. Competency 4 is the relational frame of the session. 3 statements. Unlike C3, which is sequential, the C4 statements aren't ordered. They're 3 different ways trust gets built in real time. Acknowledgement of learning, exploration of the client's expression of support. Read them as the coach's 3 trust-building gestures. Together they answer the question, how does the client know the coach is with them? The behaviors weave into the conversation rather than sitting on top of it. A4.1. The coach acknowledges client insights and learning in the moment. The client says something that lands, maybe a connection they hadn't made before, maybe a recognition of a pattern they'd been carrying. The coach catches it and names it back. That's new. You hadn't said it that way before. That sounds like a shift in how you're seeing this. The acknowledgement names the insight back to the client. It doesn't have to be elaborate. 1 sentence is plenty. It does have to be specific to what the client just discovered. That's not A4.1, that's encouragement. A4.1 requires the coach to name what specifically just happened, even if it's only 6 or 7 words. A4.2, the coach explores the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, or suggestions. The client offers something, a feeling, a hunch, a worry, a belief, and the coach goes toward it. Tell me more about that worry. What does the frustration feel like? Where in your thinking does that belief come from? The coach treats the client's interior life as worth exploring, not just the situation around them. Notice the breadth of the statement: feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, or suggestions. The list is wide on purpose. Anything the client expresses that's about how they're seeing or feeling can be the object of exploration. Where coaches often miss A4.2 is by acknowledging the expression but not exploring it. That sounds hard, is acknowledgement. It's not exploration. Exploration requires a follow-up question or an invitation that goes deeper. A4.3, the coach expresses support and concern for the client. This is the most direct relational behavior on the entire bars. I can hear how much this matters to you. It's a hard situation, and you're working on it carefully. I notice you've been thinking about this for a while. It's not therapy. It's not sympathy. It's a coach saying out loud, I see you working, and I'm with you in it. Often do it implicitly through tone of voice. The behavioral statement requires the support to be explicit, named in words. Tone alone won't get you sufficient on A4.3. That's insufficient on A4.3, even if the relationship felt good. That's 7 statements, all of C3 and all of C4. The big within competency discrimination is A3.1 versus A3.3. Make sure you can hear the difference between asking what the client wants and asking what it means to them. Same coach, same conversation, 2 distinct rating decisions. In the next video, we cover maintains presence and listens actively. C5 and C6 blur for new mentor coaches because both involve attention. The cut you'll learn there is what the coach is doing with the attention, staying with the client versus working with what the client says. Bring everything you just learned about C3 and C4. The listening posture is the same. The statements change.